I ripped out over $400 worth of plants last fall. Plants I had carefully chosen, lovingly planted, and proudly watered for 3 full seasons. And I want you to know, it was the best gardening decision I have ever made. Because here's the truth nobody tells you at the nursery. Some perennials are not garden plants. They are garden takeovers disguised as garden plants. And if you have any of the 15 I am about to show you growing in your beds right now, fall is your one golden window to get them out before they make next spring 10 times worse. I am going to walk you through all 15, tell you exactly what each one did to my garden, how to remove it correctly this fall, and this is the part most videos skip, what to plant in its place so you are not left with a bare bed and a bad memory. And I will warn you right now, number 7 is one of the most popular plants sold at every Home Depot and Lowe's in America. You might have it sitting in your bed right now and have no idea what it is doing underground. Let's get into it. Plant number 1, mint. Let's start with the one that burned me first. Mint. I know what you are thinking. It smells amazing. It is useful in the kitchen. How bad can it be? I thought the exact same thing. I planted 3 little mint starts along the edge of my herb bed in the spring, and by the following summer, mint had consumed the entire bed, had crept under the landscape fabric, had come up through the cracks in my stone path, and was working its way into my lawn. Mint spreads by underground runners called rhizomes, and those runners do not stop. They do not care about your borders, your edging, or your intentions. They go where they want. And once they are established in the soil, removing them is a nightmare, because every tiny fragment of root you leave behind becomes a new plant. The good news is that fall is the perfect time to get it out. Dig wide, much wider than the plant appears above ground. Get as much of that root system as you can. Then bag it. Do not compost it, because it will root right inside your compost pile. The replacement? Lemon balm. It has that fresh herbal scent. It is a fraction as aggressive, and it is genuinely useful in teas and cooking. Or, if you truly cannot live without mint, grow it in a submerged container with the bottom cut out. That is the only safe way to plant it in the ground. Plant number 2. English ivy. English ivy looks elegant. It covers ugly fences, it drapes beautifully, and it is everywhere. In garden centers, in design magazines, in every low-maintenance ground cover list you will ever find online. Do not believe any of it. English ivy is one of the most aggressive invasive perennials in North America. It clings to surfaces, smothers every plant underneath it, and once it gets into trees, it adds so much weight to the canopy that it increases the risk of limb failure in storms. I watched it quietly creep up the trunk of my dogwood tree for 2 seasons before I even noticed. By the time I caught it, it had reached the lower branches. Removing English ivy is a project, not an afternoon task. Cut it at the base first, then wait 2 weeks for the aerial portions to die before pulling them off walls or trees. Pulling live ivy can damage bark. Then dig out the root mass from the soil. It will take multiple sessions. Replace it with native alternatives like golden knee, also called Chrysogonum virginianum, or Pachysandra if you want a shade-tolerant ground cover that actually behaves itself. Plant number 3, Lily of the Valley. This one is heartbreaking because Lily of the Valley is genuinely beautiful. Those tiny white bellflowers in spring smell like a dream. I completely understand why gardeners have loved this plant for generations. But here is the reality. Lily of the Valley blooms for maybe 2 weeks. After that, you are left with a dense mat of spreading foliage for the rest of the growing season that smothers everything around it. It spreads by rhizomes, it is considered invasive in many parts of the United States, and once it is in your bed, it is almost impossible to fully eradicate, because those underground rhizomes snap easily, and every piece left behind generates a new plant. And here is something most people do not know. Every part of this plant is toxic. If you have kids or dogs, that is not a risk worth taking for 2 weeks of pretty flowers. Fall is actually your best season to tackle it, because the plant is putting energy back into the roots, which means herbicide treatments are more effective now than in summer. If you are going organic, get ready for serious digging and at least 2 or 3 seasons of persistent follow-up. Replace it with sweet woodruff, similar delicate, low-growing aesthetic, fragrant white flowers, and dramatically less aggressive. Plant number 4, purple loosestrife. If you have purple loosestrife in your garden and you live near any natural wetland, stream, or low-lying area, I am asking you sincerely, Please remove it this fall. This plant produces up to 2 million seeds per plant per year. 2 million. It colonizes wet areas at a terrifying speed, and once it is established in a natural area, it chokes out native vegetation and destroys the wildlife habitat that native species depend on for food and shelter. It is banned or listed as a noxious weed in many U.S. states for exactly this reason. And nurseries still sell it, because it is gorgeous. Tall purple spikes that look stunning in a garden bed. But that beauty is exactly what makes it dangerous, because gardeners plant it, seeds escape into nearby areas, and the plant does ecological damage that takes years to undo. Remove it before it goes to seed this fall. Bag and dispose of all plant material through your municipal waste, not your compost. Replace it with native blazing star, also called liatris, equally tall, equally dramatic, covered in purple, and genuinely beneficial to bees and butterflies. Plant number 5, Japanese barberry. Here is one that surprises people. Japanese barberry is everywhere in American landscaping. Beautiful fall color, interesting texture, deer-resistant. The sales pitch writes itself. And I planted a hedge of it along my back fence because every landscape design I looked at included it. What nobody mentioned to me was that Japanese barberry is invasive across much of the eastern United States and is banned in several states, including New York and Pennsylvania. It outcompetes native plants, self-seeds aggressively, and spreads into natural areas. But the detail that finally made me rip mine out? Research has shown that Japanese barberry creates microclimates inside its dense thickets, slightly warmer and more humid, that are ideal habitat for the ticks that carry Lyme disease. Studies from the northeastern U.S. have consistently found significantly higher tick populations in areas with Japanese barberry than in areas without it. That was enough for me. Fall digging and removal. The thorns make it miserable work. Wear thick leather gloves and long sleeves, but it is absolutely worth it. Replace it with native spicebush or American beautyberry for similar fall interest without the invasive risk. Plant number 6, obedient plant. Do not be fooled by the name. Obedient plant, Physostegia virginiana, is one of the least obedient perennials you will ever have the misfortune of welcoming into your garden. It produces beautiful pink to lavender flowers in late summer that are genuinely lovely. I planted it as a native alternative to something more aggressive, thinking I was making the responsible choice. Within 2 seasons, it had doubled its footprint. Within 3, it was pushing into my lawn and coming up between the stones in my path. It spreads both by rhizomes and by self-seeding, which is a particularly effective combination. Even well-behaved cultivars like Miss Manners, yes, that is a real variety name, and yes, it is still somewhat pushy, require regular division and management to keep in bounds. If you love it and want to keep it, dig and divide every single year in fall and give the divisions away to friends. If you are done with it, dig the entire clump out now, get every bit of the root system, and replace it with native penstemon for similar late summer color with actual manners. Plant number 7, common orange daylily. This is the one I promised you, the one in practically every yard in America. The common orange daylily, Hemerocallis fulva, that you see blooming in ditches, along roadsides, and in garden beds from Maine to California. It looks cheerful. It seems tough. Gardeners love giving it away because it multiplies so freely, and that free multiplication is exactly the problem. Common orange daylily spreads aggressively by underground tubers, and here is the specific danger most people do not know. If you have planted any specialty hybrid daylilies, the beautiful double-flowered, multicolored, reblooming varieties that can cost $10 to $20 per fan, the common orange variety will slowly crowd them out and take over the bed. It is stronger and more vigorous, and over several years, your carefully curated collection of expensive hybrids disappears and you are left with a sea of orange. If you want daylilies, grow named cultivars in a contained space and keep them divided. If you have the common orange running through your beds, fall is the time to dig it. Get the entire tuber cluster, because any piece left behind will resprout. Replace it with a reblooming daylily variety like Stella d'Oro or Happy Returns, which stay in tidy clumps and give you flowers all season. Plant number 8, running bamboo. If you have running bamboo, not clumping bamboo, but the running varieties, and you have not installed a proper root barrier, I genuinely feel for you. Running bamboo spreads through underground rhizomes that can travel 6 to 10 feet in a single growing season. They go under fences. They come up in your neighbor's lawn. They crack sidewalks and push through the gaps in raised beds. One of my neighbors discovered bamboo rhizomes coming up inside their garage, having traveled 30 feet underground under the driveway from a planting 2 properties away. This is not hyperbole. Running bamboo can cause property damage, neighbor disputes, and in some municipalities, it is now considered a nuisance plant that the homeowner is legally responsible for controlling. Removing established running bamboo requires cutting it to the ground repeatedly over multiple seasons to exhaust the rhizome reserves, combined with aggressive root barrier installation or careful excavation. Fall is a good time to start because the plant is less actively growing. If you love the look, plant a clumping bamboo variety like Fargesia, contained, well-behaved, genuinely beautiful, or use tall native grasses like switchgrass for that same vertical, rustling texture. Plant number 9, Dame's Rocket. Dame's Rocket looks almost identical to garden phlox, which is probably why it is still so commonly planted. It has pretty purple, pink, or white flowers that bloom in late spring, and it looks absolutely lovely in a naturalistic garden setting. The problem is that it is not phlox. Dame's Rocket is an aggressive self-seeder that spreads easily and can crowd out native species in woodlands, roadsides, and open grasslands. It is listed as invasive in several U.S. states and should not be planted anywhere near natural areas. The easy way to tell them apart: phlox has 5 petals, Dame's Rocket has 4. If you have 4-petaled flowers, you have Dame's Rocket, and fall is the time to remove it before next year's seeds have a chance to germinate. Replace it with the real thing, native garden phlox, Phlox paniculata, which is gorgeous, attracts hummingbirds and butterflies, and does not spread invasively. Plant number 10, Creeping Charlie. Creeping Charlie, or ground ivy, is one of those plants that gets away from you before you even realize you planted it. Some gardeners did not plant it at all. It showed up on its own. But others deliberately installed it as a ground cover in shady spots. Because it is green, it stays low, and it is virtually indestructible. Indestructible is the key word. Creeping Charlie spreads both by runners and by seed. It roots at every node it touches, and it can regenerate from the tiniest fragment of root or stem. It does not just take over garden beds, it invades lawns, and is one of the most persistent lawn weeds in the entire country. Fall treatment with a broadleaf herbicide is the most effective removal approach for large infestations. For organic gardeners, smothering with thick cardboard and deep mulch over winter can help, but plan for a multi-season effort. Replace it in shady areas with native wild ginger or Pennsylvania sedge. Both are genuinely well-behaved ground covers that will not stage a garden takeover. Plant number 11, Rose of Sharon. Rose of Sharon is a classic American garden shrub that produces beautiful hibiscus-like flowers in late summer when almost nothing else is blooming. I want to be fair, it has real value. But the seedling situation gets out of hand faster than almost any plant I have ever grown. A mature Rose of Sharon can drop hundreds of viable seeds every season, and those seeds germinate enthusiastically everywhere. In your lawn, in your beds, between your pavers, in your gutters, and in your neighbors' yards. One gardener in Zone 8 described her yard as having hundreds of Rose of Sharon seedlings coming up like thick blades of grass across her entire property. If you want to keep it, deadhead aggressively before seeds develop, and consider replacing it with a sterile cultivar like Lil Kim or Minerva, which produce far fewer seeds. If you are done with it, fall removal after bloom is ideal. Plant number 12, Wisteria. Wisteria in bloom is one of the most breathtaking sights in any garden. Those cascading purple flowers, that incredible fragrance. I completely understand why people plant it. I planted it too. What I did not understand was that wisteria, particularly Japanese and Chinese wisteria, is a seriously aggressive vine that can destroy structures. Multiple gardeners have reported wisteria pulling apart pergolas, prying apart fence boards, and climbing into neighboring trees within 5 years of planting. It twists as it grows, which means it can girdle and kill any tree or shrub it uses for support. It also blooms for only about 2 weeks a year. You pay for those 2 weeks with 50 weeks of relentless management. If you have Japanese or Chinese wisteria, fall is a good time to begin cutting it back hard and starting removal. If you love the look, replace it with Native American wisteria. Wisteria frutescens, or Kentucky wisteria, which are beautiful, fragrant, better behaved, and will not eat your pergola. Plant number 13, Japanese knotweed. If you have Japanese knotweed, and you will know it by its tall, hollow bamboo-like stems and heart-shaped leaves, I am not going to sugarcoat this. You have a significant problem. Japanese knotweed is widely considered one of the most invasive plants in North America. It grows up to 10 feet tall and spreads through rhizomes that can extend 15 feet horizontally from the parent plant and go 10 feet deep. Those rhizomes can push through asphalt, crack concrete foundations, and cause structural damage to buildings. In some parts of the UK, mortgage lenders have refused to approve loans on properties with Japanese knotweed present. Professional removal often involves either repeated herbicide treatment over multiple seasons or full excavation of infested soil. This is not a DIY in an afternoon situation. If you have it, fall, when the plant is drawing energy back into its roots, is actually your best treatment window. Contact your local cooperative extension service for region-specific removal guidance. Plant number 14, goutweed, also called bishop's weed, is widely sold as a shade ground cover. The variegated form with its green and white leaves is genuinely pretty, and it will absolutely cover bare ground in deep shade where almost nothing else grows. It will also cover everything else. Goutweed is considered one of the hardest perennials to eradicate once established. It spreads by rhizomes that break apart during any attempt at removal, with each fragment regenerating into a new plant. Gardeners who planted it describe years-long battles to reclaim beds. Smothering with thick cardboard, landscape fabric, and 6 or more inches of mulch, maintained through multiple seasons, is the most effective non-chemical approach. Fall is the time to start, so winter temperatures can add additional stress to the roots. Replace it with native alternatives for deep shade, native ginger, native foam flower, or Virginia creeper if you truly need ground coverage in a difficult spot. Plant number 15, yellow flag iris. And we end with one of the most elegant-looking plants on this entire list. Yellow flag iris looks like a native wildflower, blooms beautifully in late spring, and thrives in wet spots where other plants struggle. It seems like a perfect solution for a difficult area. It is invasive across much of the United States. It forms dense colonies that outcompete native wetland vegetation, and every part of the plant is toxic to humans, pets, and livestock. It spreads both by seed and by rhizome, and once it establishes in a pond edge or drainage area, removal requires significant effort to prevent reinfestation from water-carried seeds and roots. If you have it near any water feature or low-lying wet area, please remove it this fall. Wear gloves. The sap can irritate skin. Bag all material carefully and dispose through municipal waste. Replace it with blue flag iris, Iris versicolor, which is native, beautiful, ecologically beneficial, and will not take over your water garden. Before you go, I want to give you something most garden videos never tell you. The 3 early warning signs that a perennial is becoming a problem, so you can catch the next one before it costs you 3 seasons of regret. First, it is coming up in unexpected places. If you find a plant popping up in your lawn, between your pavers, or on the other side of a divider, that is your first red flag. Plants do not teleport. They spread. Second, it is visibly crowding out its neighbors. If the plants around it are getting smaller, yellowing, or disappearing, your perennial is winning a competition you did not sign up for. Third, you cannot find the edge of it. If you go to the border of where you planted it and realize you genuinely cannot tell where it ends, it has already spread beyond control. That is your sign to act now, not next spring. And the most important removal tip I can give you for any of these plants: do not leave root fragments in the soil, and do not compost the plant material. Bag it. Dispose of it. Start fresh. Fall is not the end of your garden season. It is your reset button. Every plant you remove now is a problem you are not waking up to next May. And every good plant you put in its place is an investment that will pay you back for years. Drop a comment below and tell me, which one of these do you have? And which one surprised you the most? I read every single comment in this community, and your answers genuinely shape the videos I make next. If this video saved you from a future headache, hit that subscribe button. We are here every week helping you build the garden you actually want, not the one you accidentally ended up with. I will see you in the next one.